here in Joshua chapter 10. I'm going to go back to Joshua chapter 9 real quick. But we're going to be in Joshua 10 for most of the lesson tonight. But in Joshua 9 and verse number 3, we see when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai, they did work wildly and went and made as if they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks upon their asses and wine bottles, old and rent and bound up, and old shoes and clouted upon their feet, and old garments upon them, and all the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua unto the camp at Gilgal, and said unto him and to the men of Israel, We be come from a far country, now therefore make ye a league with us. Okay, so Joshua has come into the promised land. They defeated Jericho. They march around 7 times, and then the 7th day they march around another 7 times in that one day. The walls fall down, and they go in and kill everyone except Rahab and her family. After that, they had a defeat at Ai, and then they rallied from that and got right and had a victory at Ai. So they've defeated both Jericho and Ai, and now they're camped at a place called Gilgal. And while they're camped there, they get these ambassadors that look like they've come from a long way away. And these are the Gibeonites. They're actually just 3 days journey away. And so they come to Joshua, and they say, hey, we're from a long way away. Make a league with us, make a treaty with us. And Joshua and the children of Israel made a treaty with the Gibeonites, saying, we'll never hurt you, we'll come to your aid, just like the treaties that America makes with our allies. Saying, someone declares war on you, we'll come to your defense. And then they didn't realize who it was until a couple of days later. They heard, hey, wait a minute, these people are your neighbors. And so then they find out, oh no, these people are our neighbors. And God had commanded that they destroy everyone in the land of Canaan. They're supposed to kill all of them. And now they've made this peace treaty with a nation in the land of Canaan, saying, we're not going to kill you, we're not going to destroy you. And so when they find that out, jump down to verse number 22. Joshua called for them, and he spake unto them, saying, Wherefore have ye beguiled us, saying, We are very far from you when ye dwell among us? Now therefore ye are cursed, and there shall none of you be freed from being bondmen and hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. And they answered Joshua and said, Because it was certainly told thy servants how that the Lord thy God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. Therefore we were sore afraid in our lives because of you, and have done this thing. Now behold, we are in thine hand, as it seemeth good and right unto thee, to do unto us do. So he did unto them, delivered them out of the hand of the children of Israel, that they slew them not. So Joshua says, we're not going to kill you because that's what we promised, but you're going to be our servants. And the Gibeonites say, hey, that's fine. Being a servant is a whole lot better than being dead. So we're fine with that. So that's the background for Joshua chapter 10. So Israel has failed here in doing what God commanded them to do. And it's a time period where they could have gotten very depressed. I imagine I would be kind of upset and depressed because now I realize I've failed what God has told me to do. There's no way around this. We're never going to be able to complete the task that God has set for us. We failed. And so that's where the children of Israel are. And they stay in Gilgal. And there's no statement in the Bible about why they stay in Gilgal instead of continuing forward and conquering the rest of the promised land. But I think it was because they were just kind of depressed, that they thought, now we're failures. We can't conquer the rest of the promised land because we've already failed in this one little area. And so they just stay there. And then we pick that up in chapter number 10. And let's look at verses number 1 through 5, and we're going to go through pretty much the whole chapter. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them. that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore Adonizedek king of Jerusalem sent unto Hoham king of Hebron, unto Piram king of Jarmuth, and unto Japhia king of Lachish, and unto Debir king of Eglon, saying, Come up unto me and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it hath made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and all their hosts, and encamped before Gibeon and made war against it. So here we have 5 kings. These are the 5 kings of the northern, or just the northern or the southern? Hold on, I think it's the southern part of it. Southern, sorry, 5 kings of the southern half of Canaan. So they are the leading armies in the region. They're the biggest cities, and Gibeon is a city like unto those other 5 cities. That's what it's talked about when it was a royal city, like unto the royal cities. So Gibeon is this huge city, and they have 5 other cities that are all the same size as Gibeon. So that means they're all basically going to have the same size armies as Gibeon. So when all 5 of them join together and come against Gibeon, they outnumber the Gibeonites 5-1. So this is a huge army that's coming up against Gibeon. And you see movies like Lord of the Rings where they have thousands and thousands of people marching across to these huge battles. That's what it was like. There's just Gibeonites look out of their city one day, and there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers encamped all around their city and ready to declare war and defeat them. And so, of course, the reason for this is that these other cities were scared of Joshua, and then they hear that Gibeon has united with Joshua, so now they think the Israelites are even stronger, and so they're scared, so they go and attack Gibeon. They don't attack the Israelites, which I think is kind of interesting. They didn't attack the Israelites. They're the people Gibeon was so afraid of that the Gibeonites made a league with the Israelites. And so this huge army, they didn't go against the big foe, they went against the little guys. So yeah, they're sissies. They're trying to take out the easy enemy instead of going up against the hard ones. But they've now come after Gibeon, and let's pick it up in verse number 6 and see what Gibeon's response is. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp to Gilgal, saying, Slack not thy hand from thy servants. Come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Gibeon sees this huge army, and they immediately send a messenger all the way down to Gilgal, where Joshua was. And all right, so think about Joshua's situation. He's made a treaty with these people, made a league with them, promised that he's not going to defeat them, not going to kill them. He realizes that was against the command of God. God said kill them, he didn't kill them, and now he gets this messenger from the Gibeonites saying, hey, come and help us, we're about to be killed. He could very easily have responded, it's not my problem. Okay, so you're about to be killed, so what? I wanted to kill you in the first place, and y'all tricked me and wouldn't let me, and so you're just reaping what you sowed. You shouldn't have tricked me. Of course, then he would have just killed himself, but it's like you were destined to die. This is God deciding that you're going to die no matter what, and God is delivering us from our treaty by sending these other enemies against Gibeon. That's what Joshua could have done, but he didn't. That's what I would have done. I would have said, tough luck, you're on your own. And I would have just sat back and watched my enemies fight, and then I would go after the loser, or the winner. So let the loser get killed, and then I would go after the winner. But Joshua didn't do that. Instead, let's look at the next verse here, verse number 7 down through verse number 9. So Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night, and the Lord discomfited them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Beth-horon, and smote them to Azekah and unto Makkedah. Sorry, I skipped verse 7 and 8. I jumped right to verse 9. Okay, so Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. Okay, so we have Joshua's response is to immediately call up his army and run to Gilgal right away. It says Joshua ascended to Gilgal, and then in verse number 9 it says Joshua came to them suddenly and went up from Gilgal all night. So when the messengers get to him, it's already in the evening. And so he says, no sleep tonight, guys. We got a battle to fight. And all the army of Israel, they march all night long in order to get to Gibeon. Now it says that they ascended to Gibeon. And Gilgal is down by the Jordan River Valley, in the Jordan River Valley near Jericho. So it's just outside of Jericho. It's down by the river. It's really low down in the valley. Gibeon is way up high in the mountains. It's 3,500 feet higher than Gilgal. So when it says Joshua ascended to Gibeon, it's literally he ascended. He went up the mountain 3,500 feet in elevation. And the distance from Gilgal to Gibeon is 20 miles. An army usually marches 10 miles in a day. Back in the day when you had a lot of foot soldiers, so they would march 10 miles in a day. That was considered a day's march. And so he's gone 2 days march, 20 miles at night. So they've already been up all day before, and then now they do a double time march while marching uphill, up a mountain. Yeah, it was not fun. I'm sure he had a lot of guys complaining in his army about this forced march, double time, uphill the whole way. So the ascent up to 3,500 feet, that would be like if we were up to Lookout Mountain up in Tennessee, Chattanooga. So if we were to go from the Tennessee River up to the top of Lookout Mountain, that's still not 3,500 feet elevation. So it's pretty high elevation that they're going to here. And so normally that would take them a long time, but they probably did this march in about 12 to 15 hours. They're also fully loaded with their armor and all their gear, so swords, spears, bows and arrow, knives, and then the chainmail and everything for the armor, whatever metal they used for their armor, shields. They had to pack all of their provisions, all their food, tents, and these guys are loaded down for this long march. But they did it. They did it because they had vowed, they had promised to defend Gibeon. And so they said, we're going to do it. And they kept their vow, they kept their promise to go and defend Gibeon. They didn't slack off at all. They put all of their effort into doing what they promised to do, in spite of the fact that they had just made a huge mistake. Let's pick it up in verse number 10. And the Lord...
Two mistakes.
Yeah. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Beth-horon, and smote them to Azekah and Makkedah. Okay, so the Israelites, they've marched all night long. They are marching from the east to the west. And so they have come up the hill. They're coming over the hill into the valley, the plateau where Gibeon is. They're coming over the ridge into Gibeon right as the sun is coming up in the morning. So you can imagine the Amorites that are camped against Gibeon, they aren't expecting this huge army. And so all of a sudden, they're waking up in the morning, rubbing the sleep out of their eyes, and they hear battle cries. And they realize the enemy is here. None of them have their armor on. None of them are prepared. They're taken completely by surprise. And so God gives Israel great victory. The Amorites stand and fight a little bit, and then they just turn and run away. And so they take off running through the mountains, and the Israelites take off chasing them, and chase them for a long way, for many miles. There's a road between Gibeon and Beth-horon, and that road descends about 1,500 feet. So they went from 3,500 feet, now they're going downhill another down 1,500 feet, so now they're about 2,000 feet up, in order to, over a distance of about 5 miles. So from Gibeon to Beth Horon, they're chasing the enemy. The enemy's in full retreat. The Israelites are chasing them, and it's about a 5-mile distance. You can imagine how tired Israel is. They'd already been up the whole day before. Then they're marching double time all night uphill, and they've got a lot of adrenaline because they have this great victory. And the trumpets are blaring. They take off and they fight the enemy. They realize they're winning. The enemy takes off and retreat, and they've got all this adrenaline, so they take off running after the enemy. They're killing them as they run after them and chase them down. But adrenaline can only last so long. Over 5 miles, I can imagine, they start slowing down, and Israel starts getting behind, and the Amorites start getting ahead, and they start thinking that they're going to make it safely out into the plains. The Israelites, there's no way they could have kept up with them. The Amorites had just had a full night's sleep, and they're running in fear. They got just as much adrenaline as the Israelites do, but they're not tired on top of it. So they're going to get away, unless God steps in and does something. So let's look at what God does. Should pick up verse number 11. And it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down to Beth Horon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. They were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. Okay, so God sees that the Amorites are getting away. The Amorites are going to make it out. If they get out of the mountains and onto the plains, they will have, and they're ahead of Israel, they will have time to regroup. They'll be able to form their lines again. They outnumber Israel probably about 5-1, just like they outnumbered the Gibeonites. And so on the plains, they can spread out, and all their armies can attack Israel at once. In the mountains, while they're running down these mountain roads, they can't all attack Israel at once. So whoever's in the rear, they have to face Israel, and they're getting slaughtered. And so they're really trying to get out onto those plains so they can regroup and they can fight against Israel safely on the plains and win the battle. But God sends a storm, and in the storm he sends giant hailstones down. You're probably looking at softball size to basketball size hailstones. And so you can imagine the city of Beth Horon is where it says that this happens. The city of Beth Horon has 2 levels. There's a Beth Horon the upper, and in the Bible it's called Beth Horon the nether. So you have upper and lower is what we would say, but upper and Beth Horon nether. And there's a little road that separates the 2 cities. The upper, of course, is up on the hill, a little bit of ways into the mountain, and the lower is down in the valley. And it's right on the edge of the mountain range. And so the Amorites are coming downhill. They've gotten away from Israel because Israel's tired. They've got a little bit of speed. They run through Beth Horon the upper, and as they get through Beth Horon the upper and they're in the way going down to Beth Horon the lower, they realize, hey, we got this made. There's the plain right out there. We can see it. We're going to have the victory. And they start kind of slowing down, saving their breath, getting ready for the battle that's going to come up once they get out to the plains. They start getting happy. And so you can imagine an Amorite soldier who's marching along, and his fear is now turning to triumph, and he thinks, we got it, we're going to take out these Israelites. And all of a sudden the guy next to him falls down dead with a giant hailstone that just hit him on the head and crushed him. And then the guy next to him falls down dead too, with a giant hailstone that just crushed him. The guy in front of him, he has to jump over him because the hailstone hit and rolled and tripped him. And now his complacency and his triumph has turned to fear again. And so now he takes off running again. And so the Amorites are just in full panic mode now. And they barrel down the hill into the Beth Horon, the lower. The whole time these giant hailstones are just hitting them. Well, imagine how Israel felt. Israel's back there and they're starting to lag behind. They're tired. They've been up all day and then all night, and then now it's probably about the middle of the day again, and they're slowing down because they've been running. They just marched up the mountain. Now they're running down the mountain, and they're thinking, okay, we have to give up. They're going to get away from us. There's just no way we can do it. And then all of a sudden they hear screams ahead of them, And they look up and they see, and the Amorite army is just being mowed down with these giant hailstones. And big storm clouds that have come up over the Amorites. I mean, you can imagine the excitement in the Israelite camp. You know, their adrenaline starts pumping again. They're all excited. They're like, yeah, well, the Lord is fighting for us. And they take off running. And so now you have two armies, you know, chasing each other through these two towns. I'd hate to be a citizen in one of those towns. You know, this massive army comes through, and then all of a sudden there's thunder and hailstones going everywhere, and you try to hide, and then this other army comes running through also. You know, could be quite scary for the people in the towns.
I don't know if I want to be rushing to the battlefield at the moment with all these hailstones falling.
Yeah.
I think I'll let God finish up for a minute, and then I'll go.
Yeah. But I mean, in the excitement of it, you think, hey, God's doing this, let's take off. We're going to be part of it too. God's obviously on our side. Okay, but let's look at verse number 12. And this is the really interesting part of this passage, 12 through 14. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord had hearkened, or that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. And a lot of Sunday school lessons mention Joshua's longest day. And I've heard all kinds of messages about Joshua's longest day, and Joshua commanding the sun to stand still, and the sun stands still. And so you have the first maybe quarter to half a day as the sun's rising, and then Joshua says, all right, sun, stand still, and the sun stands still. And, you know, a whole day the sun stands still. And I always kind of thought that Joshua was telling the sun to stand still so that the sun wouldn't go down and it would be dark and the enemy would get away in the dark. And, you know, a lot of the Sunday school lessons kind of portray it that way. Joshua didn't want darkness to come, he didn't want the enemy to get away, so he told the sun to stay still so it would stay lighter longer during the day. But if you look at where he told the sun to stand still, and you actually look at it on a map, and I wish I'd had a map to put up on the screen today, but I didn't have time to get that. He tells the sun to stand still at Gibeon, and the moon in the valley of Ajalon. Now, Joshua had marched from Gilgal to Gibeon. And if you remember, I was telling you he marched from east to west. So he's marching from the east to the west. He tops over the rise into Gibeon in the early hours of the morning, and they had this great victory. So that means the sun is behind the Israelites. And the Amorites are fleeing from the Israelites, and they're fleeing down the mountain on the opposite side. So they're now fleeing toward the west. So the Amorites are running west as fast as they can go. That's where their cities are, is west of where Gibeon is. So it's kind of southwest. They're running southwest as fast as they can out of the mountains. And Israel is running also southwest. So the sun is behind Israel. Israel just left Gibeon. That's where they defeated the Amorites at the beginning, where they surprised them. So Gibeon is also behind them. That means Gibeon is in the east. Ajalon is the valley that the Amorites are going to run through in order to get out of the mountains and get to their cities. That's in the west. And it's this long, wide valley that they're running through, has a road through it. So when Joshua told the sun to stand still, he told the sun, stand still in the east, and the moon was still in the west. And I think that Joshua, being a military general, he had all kinds of experience as a military general from Jericho and Ai, but also before that, as they're spending the 40 years in the wilderness, he led the armies of Israel all that time. And so he's a military general. He's got all kinds of strategy that he understands. And I think he looks down at the Amorites as they're fleeing, and he sees the storm cloud that is over the Amorites dropping these huge hailstones. Well, what do we know about storm and the sun and the moon? If there's storm clouds, it's going to hide the sun, and it's going to hide the moon and block all the light. And it'll be just as if it was nighttime, they wouldn't be able to see the enemy, they wouldn't be able to attack them, and the enemy can manage to get away if they survive the hailstones. And so I think that Joshua, being a military genius and a strategist, he recognized, I can't let the sun get above the clouds. The sun needs to stay below the clouds. And then, so he commanded the sun to stand below the clouds, and God granted that miracle. The sun stays below the clouds. And then he realizes, well, if the sun is below the clouds and they're fleeing into the storm, that means they're going to be in darkness while we're in light, but it's going to be hard for my archers to shoot into the darkness and hit anyone, or for the people that sling the stones. It's going to be hard for them to hit someone because it's dark out there. So he commanded the moon to stand still in the valley of Ahalan. So that means right on the horizon. The moon is standing still, which means the moon outlines all of the Amorites. So the Amorites are running, they got this sort of dim light in front of them, so they show up as silhouettes to the Israelites, and the Israelites have clear shots at the Amorites. When the Amorites turn around and try to fire back at the Israelites, they have the sun in their eyes, and they can't shoot back at the Israelites because they're blinded by the sun. And so it's a really, really brilliant military strategy. I mean, if you had control of the sun and the moon, every military general would be copying that strategy. They have the sun standing right behind me, so that blinds them. The moon standing in front of them, so they're outlined, and we can shoot them. So it was a brilliant strategic move by Joshua, and then God honored Joshua's command. Joshua just assumed God's going to honor this command, and so he commanded the sun to stand still and the moon to stand still, and God said, hey, that makes sense. We'll do that. Good job, Joshua. and God has it stand still. And it gives the Israelites a chance to chase the Amorites, even though they're in this massive thunderstorm that's raining down hailstones on them. And so from a strategic point of view, it was brilliant. All right, now let's keep going here. Where did we stop? We stopped at verse 14. Verse 15. And Joshua returned and all Israel with him unto the camp to Gilgal, but these 5 kings fled and hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And it was told Joshua, saying, the 5 kings are found hid in a cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said, roll great stones upon the mouth of the cave, and set men by it for to keep them. And stay ye not, but pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them, suffer them not to enter into their cities, for the Lord your God hath delivered them into your hand. And it came to pass, when Joshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, till they were consumed, that the rest which remained of them entered into fenced cities. And the people returned to the camp to Joshua at Makkedah in peace. None moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. Then said Joshua, open the mouth of the cave, and bring out those 5 kings unto me out of the cave. And they did so, and brought forth those 5 kings unto him out of the cave, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon. And it came to pass, when they brought out those kings unto Joshua, that Joshua called for all the men of Israel, and said unto the captains of the men of war which went with him, come near, put your feet upon the necks of these kings. And they came near and put their feet upon the necks of them. And Joshua said unto them, fear not, nor be dismayed. Be strong and of good courage, for thus shall the Lord do to all your enemies against whom ye fight. And afterward Joshua smote them and slew them, and hanged them on 5 trees, and they were hanging upon the trees until the evening. Okay, so remember, these 5 kings, when they had their armies and they think we're going to have an easy victory, you remember who they attacked? They attacked Gibeon instead of Israel, because they figured Gibeon's the weaker one, since they surrendered and made a league with Israel. So they attacked Gibeon that they thought was weak, and as Isaac said so aptly, they're a bunch of sissies. Well, this is true. These kings, as their armies are fleeing, they all decide, you know what, we're not going to be part of this anymore. And the 5 leaders take off on their own and go find a cave, and they hide in the caves thinking, we'll let our armies get slaughtered, we'll let the Israelites go past us, and then we'll sneak off back home, and we'll at least be able to live, and maybe we can go find somewhere else to set up another city and another kingdom. So they're a bunch of sissies. They're hiding in the cave instead of fighting like they're supposed to. And I kind of like the way Joshua treated this. You know, they tell him, hey, we found the kings, they're hidden in this cave. He didn't go and take care of them right then. I just let them stay there. You know, throw a bunch of stones in front of the cave so they can't get out. We'll just let them stew for a while. And then they go off and they fight their battles. They kill all the armies, or most of them. Some of them escaped into the cities, but kill most of the armies, the Amorites. And then, you know, at the evening time, they get finished with everything, they get back to camp, and Josh said, hey, you know what? We got these kings over here. Let's go teach them a lesson. And so then he rolls the stones out and brings them out. Now, when he says to Israel, he brings them out, tells the princes of Israel, put your feet on their neck. That's symbolic back in those days. When a king surrendered, he bowed all the way down to the ground, and the king that had conquered him, would put his foot on his head or on his neck to say, you're under my control. I've defeated you, I can crush you anytime I want to, and it's just symbolic. And so Joshua had the men of Israel, the leaders, come and do that to these kings before he killed them. And he did that and said, you know, be of good courage, because God is going to do this for all of your enemies. And remember, back at the beginning, Israel is just hanging out at Gilgal instead of doing what God said. And we surmise that probably is because they were depressed, because they had made this great mistake and had not defeated Gibeon like they were supposed to and made a league with them. So what are we going to do? We might as well just stay here and not do anything else. And then now they've had this great victory. In this one victory, they defeated all the major kingdoms in the entire southern region of Canaan in just one victory. And so Joshua tells them, hey, look at what God can do. God can take your mistake, which was letting the Gibeonites live. He took that mistake, and God used that mistake to give you a great victory and encourage the children of Israel. And in fact, if you look down at the bottom, verse 40 through 43. So Joshua smote all the country of the hills, and of the south, and of the vale, and of the springs, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as the Lord God of Israel commanded. And Joshua smote them from Kadesh Barnea even unto Gaza, and all the country of Goshen even unto Gibeon. And all these kings and their land did Joshua take at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. And Joshua returned and all Israel with him unto the camp to Gilgal. So this one battle, they conquer the entire southern region of Canaan. And then they're going to go off and fight the northern region. It's going to be something similar. They're going to have a major battle that's going to defeat most of the region. And so Joshua is encouraging the nation of Israel, saying, what you thought was a mistake, and yes, it was a mistake, God knew all along that you were going to make that mistake. That wasn't a surprise to God. He knew you're going to fail. And God had a plan in place to use even that failure to give you victory in your life.